What's up, Nashville? I am Bo Beach. This is the Free Speech podcast presented by Beechwood Commercial Real Estate Brokerage, your broker if you are a seller of commercial real estate in Nashville or the Southeast. We made a big investment into incorporating AI throughout our business, which has really been paying off for our customers. So thanks so much for tuning in. As always, we're going to get you caught up in the last few weeks of news with an emphasis on Nashville commercial real estate. I am going to give you an overview of the stories we're about to discuss, and then we'll get right into it. First, Pendry Hotel and Condo Tower breaks ground in the Gulch. This is a big deal because very, very few luxury hotel developments have come out of the ground in the last year nationwide. And this is one of the biggest to actually start construction. I'll tell you that story. Does the Federal Reserve even use the correct numbers from which to make a decision on whether or not to lower interest rates? I would argue they do not. They work with backward-looking information rather than trying to project what's coming forward. And even in that backward-looking information, I would argue is inadequate. So we'll talk about that very briefly. I know that sounds boring, but I think you should have some healthy skepticism for the Federal Reserve. There are 1,000 employees in their $2 billion headquarters. You know, if they can't even figure out the right numbers from which to draw conclusions, where are we spending all of that money? But I need to stay focused here. Cleaning up the scrapyard. New owners face long to-do list after the $245 million land deal. And this one makes a whole lot of sense for me. We'll get into this. Scott Borchetta among buyers of downtown office tower. So this is a tower that sold for a staggering loss not long ago. It's now resold to Scott Borchetta, who is a big name in the music business in Nashville. I'll tell you that story. Tony Giartana closes on a $340 million loan for his Paramount skyscraper project. Again, very, very big development getting done at a time where very few big developments are getting done. And the fact that you're closing on loans becomes news, kind of puts in perspective for you the big challenge in our market. And I've been arguing this for years. The big challenge in the market is the cost and availability of financing. Giartana paid $3 million to get out of his old loans so that he could go out and source a new $340 million loan. I'll tell you that story. A lower Broadway area building sells for $10 million, big ones. Anytime anything trades near lower Broadway, it seems like it's new, so I'll tell you that story very quickly. Bed Bath & Beyond tells the truth about how miserable it is to attempt to do business in California. I'll catch you up on that. Tennessee State University lands approval for a $58 million engineering facility. You know, Tennessee State is not a college that you really hear about doing well. You know, I think you hear mostly about its financial struggles. So them coming out of the building with a $58 million engineering facility is news in itself. But really what I like about this story is they are targeting professions that actually make sense. So if you can teach children, college students, skills that will actually be in demand in the marketplace and allow them to earn a living, I think that's what colleges should focus on. I think a lot of colleges miss it. I think a lot of colleges are selling miserable liberal arts degrees that have no value in the market, and those students will be paying for them most of their adult life and not getting any return on their investment. So I like what Tennessee State is doing here. We'll talk about that real quickly. I thought that was well done. The Belmont University Mike Curb College of Entertainment and Music Business has opened on Music Row. So Belmont University has now added a satellite location to Music Row. We'll talk about that. East Bank mixed-use development instead becomes listed for sale. So the Scrapyard deal traded at a high price, right, which we'll talk about. I think perhaps seeing the price they got for the Scrapyard, this East Bank project has now been remarketed for sale, attempting to get a similar price. Maybe that's an easier exit for these investors than lining up all the capital it takes to actually develop the 15-acre site. Fannie and Freddie, right, the United States mortgage lenders, could be going private. What are the pros and cons of that, and what can you expect? We'll be quick about it, but I'll explain that to you. And lastly, a developer revives a massive project, the 145-acre Ovation site in Franklin is finally moving again. We'll quickly bring you up to date on that. So quite a few stories today. We'll try to move quickly for you. Let's get into it. A new luxury hotel and condo tower is rising in the Gulch, beating the odds of most developments in the country. Construction began on the 30-story tower, which will offer 180 hotel rooms and suites, plus 146 condos. Amenities will include a ground floor restaurant and bar, rooftop pool with restaurant and bar, fitness center, meeting and event spaces, and more. In March, Samara Road secured a $253 million construction loan from Arkansas-based OZK and New York-based Intervest Capital for the project. The Pendry is the only luxury hotel and condo development outside of Florida to start in the entire country this past year. Quote, "This right here was a Herculean effort. $365 million capitalization from debt to equity to design to brands. There are so many elements that went into this, and it was exceptionally challenging. This is a massive freaking achievement that was exceptionally hard." Pendry is a chain of luxury boutique hotels, resorts, and condominiums owned by California-based hotel management company Montage International. The brand was founded in 2015 and offers hotels in 13 cities and condos in 7 cities. Quote, "Nashville is one of the most exciting cities in the country right now. It's incredible what has happened here. It's an amazing city. It's culturally important. And the Gulch is one of the best neighborhoods in the country." Plenty more hotel-branded condo residences are on the way to Music City, including Marriott's Edition Hotel and residences in the Gulch, the St. Regis and Equinox Hotel owners in Sobro, and the Ritz-Carlton in the Gulch. Quote, now take this one. This is coming from the developers of this project. Quote, "We're going to lift a new bar for a hotel. We're going to lift a new bar for condos. If you stayed at the Thompson, we're going to kick their ass. If you have a condo at the Four Seasons, I'm sorry, you're going to want to buy one here. This is going to be the best project both for condo and hotel that this city has ever seen." Yo, you don't hear developer to developer trash talk quite like that very often. So I think that's pretty interesting, very, very confident. And those are fighting words when you're talking about kicking people's ASS. I mean, we're getting a little bit aggressive, but I'm sure they're just enjoying the moment. What they've done is exceptionally hard to do. All right, here we go. Does the Fed even use the correct numbers to make decisions about our interest rates? Apartment List's national report for September showed a negative 0.9% year-over-year decline in rents nationally across the country, and are the lowest rents we've seen since December of 2023, right? According to another source, Realtor.com, rents in the 50 largest metros have declined year over year for 24 straight months and are currently negative 2.5% year over year. So we've got negative 0.9% and negative 2.5% year over year for the rent levels. Yet CPI's shelter measure is showing a plus 3.7% year over year increase. So the number that the Fed is using says shelter costs have gone up 3.7% over the last year, right? This is a big input into the overall rate of inflation that they use to make decisions. While apartment rents have actually been down 2.5% year over year. So there's a big, wide discrepancy on what's actually happening in terms of shelter costs. Keep in mind, shelter makes up nearly 1/3 of the CPI calculation and roughly 40% of the core CPI calculation. If shelter used a methodology that more closely captured the reality of housing costs today, let's just say -1% year over year rental decline, as opposed to their outdated methodology that is showing plus 3.7% year over year increase, here's approximately what the CPI formula would spit out. The headline CPA would be down to 1.3% year over year, down from what they now call 2.9%, right? So they're claiming that inflation rather is 2.9% over the last year, when if they would have incorporated some of these other apartment numbers, it would actually be 1.3%. And the core CPI, which they claim is 3.2%, would actually be 1.3% year over year. So our inflation, our measures of inflation would actually be below historical norms, which would give them the ammunition to have some guts and lower interest rates. So, I'm not a big fan of the Fed. I think it is outrageous how many people they employ. I think it's outrageous how much money they spend and how bad they are at their job. So, the American people, the taxpayer, are getting a terrible return on their investment under the current system with the Fed. Something has to be done. We have to get more knowledgeable business people in there that can make decisions in a timely manner. They blew it as Joe Biden and his team were spending. They blew it and didn't increase interest rates till much later when inflation was already out of control. And then they kept them high so much longer than they should have. So they're too late to raise them, they're too late to lower them, and that's why everybody was looking for too late Powell to get out of that position, and we get somebody a little bit more practical in there, making timely decisions with looking forward in our economy. We can't do anything about what's been done in our past, but at least we can use the right numbers from our past to decide what we need to do going forward. I think the Federal Reserve has been an absolute joke in the last 10 years. All right, cleaning up the scrapyard. So you've all heard of this. This is one of the bigger land deals ever to occur in Nashville. $245 million for a scrapyard. And when I hear scrapyard, I think, oh my God, what type of environmental cleanup is going to be required here? If they've been essentially been using this land for outdoor storage of decaying materials, heavy equipment moving it all around, who knows what the government will consider contaminated on this site. So not only did they pay $245 million for the deal, they've got to go in and environmentally clean up the entire site, 47 acres. They've got to put in all of the roads, all of the utilities, all of the rainwater management, all of the sewers. The amount of money that's going to be invested in this land before you ever see a shovel in the ground, right? Shovel in the ground meaning an actual building about to be constructed, is crazy. So these guys, I know they're compelled to act in the best interest of Nashville. They see it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Over 50 local investors to get this deal done, along with some seller financing coming from Carl Icahn, which came out. just a really crazy big balls thing to do, acquire this parcel of land. Land is so hard because you buy it now and you've got to service all that debt, right? You've got debt service, and you're years away from actually seeing any positive cash flow from any portion of the actual development. So you're in negative cash flow territory for years, not to mention all of the additional cash that you got to put into it to do things like environmental cleanup, to do things like engineering drawings, to do things like architectural drawings, all the different testing that goes into these things. I mean, the pockets that these guys must have to be infinitely deep. Somebody had to have stepped up and said, you know what, everything we need to get this party started, I'll borrow to the partnership. You pay me back over a certain period of time, because I don't know how else you get something like this done. So let's get into it. Negotiating a deal with billionaire Carl Icahn for a high-profile property is certainly a feat, but the hard part has just begun. Yeah, you think so? Absolutely. Earlier this month, a group of 50-plus local investors paid $245 million for the longtime Scrapyard site, which means it sold for $125 per square foot of land. That is remarkable when you consider all the work that has to go into getting the site ready for development. For decades, scrap metal has been recycled on the 47-acre East Bank property, and the SA recycling site remains open and operational today. There are few brownfield sites of this scale in Nashville. Brownfield meaning a urban property with past industrial uses that is associated with contaminants. On a scrapyard site, common contaminants could include metals, motor oils, gasoline, and petroleum products. One of the interesting things about this site is its location in a floodplain, which further complicates things. In order to clean up the site, the new East Bank scrapyard owners will likely negotiate a brownfield agreement with the state. There are 2 phases of environmental assessments required by the state, which can take anywhere from 6 to 8 months. Then comes the foundational document that hammers out what the new owner is actually going to do. That becomes, especially with a complex site like this, a lot of technical negotiation as well as a legal one. Once the agreement is in place, the cleanup can finally begin. The brownfield remediation process could take around a year. Much of the cleanup can occur as the site is being excavated and ready for construction, which is a bonus. So, do not underestimate the size of the kahunas of these guys that are stroking $245 million for a scrapyard with none of the underlying infrastructure necessary to develop, with environmental contamination, not only the cost, which is going to be great, but the time it's going to take to get it done is going to be great. All the while, you're investing more cash into the project and paying all of the existing debt on that $245 million, of which I think they seller financed about $130 million of it. So you're paying on that the whole time. Unbelievable amount of money going out the door on this project before the first profitable deal ever gets done. So really just remarkable, and these guys really seem to be motivated by some type of internal motivation to do something great for Nashville. They wanted this to be a local project, and if it took 50 local guys to make it a local project, that's what they were going to do. And by golly, I think it's incredibly impressive what those guys are doing. Scott Borchetta among buyers of downtown office tower. Let me catch up on this. The downtown office named Phillips Plaza has now sold for $29 million. Borchetta teamed with Columbus, Ohio-based TC Investment Holdings on the purchase. The sellers were Nashville real estate investors Brian Fort and Taylor Preston, who, if memory serves me, are also commercial real estate brokers. So real estate brokers that went out and paid $17 million for the 20-story office high-rise last year in December, turned around and flipped it to Scott Borchetta for $29 million. But the part that made this a big deal, right, was how much money the previous sellers lost. The seller in that deal was an LLC affiliated with Wheelock Street Capital, which is co-based in Boston and Greenwich, Connecticut. Previously called Bank of America Plaza, the building offers an address of 1414 Union Street. The new owners have landed a $24 million loan from Wilson Bank and Trust. The tower opened in 1977 and rises about 290 feet. Phillips Plaza sits on 0.84 acres and is near the recently renovated The Arcade. The first floor and the top 10 stories are primarily vacant. Now, the late 2024 $17 million sales price was $94 million less than the figure for which the tower last changed hands in 2019. So you buy it in 2019, you sell it in 2024 for a $94 million loss. When that happened, I thought there was something that we didn't know. I thought there's no way they're taking a $94 million loss on this property. Something's going to come out that's going to explain the difference between the stated sales price and what they paid for it before. And it turns out that I was wrong. They literally lost, along with their lender, of course. Their lender and the seller collectively lost $94 million on this property in December of last year. Trades again for $17 million to a pair of commercial real estate brokers, who then resell it a few months later for $29 million. You know, the fortune goes to the bold, right? And I would tell you those two guys that got $17 million together for an office tower that I'm sure was negative cash flow at that time, they came out and made $12 million in a few short months. So congratulations to them. The main tenant in Phillips Plaza is health tech company Philips. Other tenants in the high-rise, which is approximately 40% leased, include Industrious, and Silo. All right. So quite a story with old Phillips Plaza. A lot of money lost, and a lot of money made. Giortana closes on a $340 million loan for Paramount skyscraper project and preps for a mid-September construction start, which is like right now. Okay. Nashville-based development company Giortana closed on a $340 million loan to allow for construction on its 60-story residential skyscraper. Full-scale work at the Church Street site, at which the $460 million project will unfold, is expected to begin September 15th. The $340 million construction loan is among the largest such loans to close in the U.S. this year. Originally, Giortana was slated to receive a $360 million loan from BSP, with the veteran developer and his equity investors contributing $100 million. However, the debt equity balance was changed later to $340 million for the loan and $120 million from investors to allow Giortana to serve as the only guarantor. So the equity investors in the project are not guaranteeing the $340 million loan, but Tony Giortana is. That's what he had to do to get this thing done. So I don't care how much money you have. If you're guaranteeing a $340 million loan and something goes sideways, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to survive that. So again, all these guys, they get some heat. The gentrification, the old Nashville is gone. New Nashville is here. The overcrowding. There's kind of a sentiment that the successful developers are bad guys that are ruining Nashville. The successful developers are very, very skilled, very, very courageous businessmen, and you can see it with these stories as I explain that to you. Can you imagine signing off on guaranteeing repayment of $340 million? And if it can't be done, they're coming after you personally, which means bankruptcy. That is very, very courageous and honorable. For the $120 million equity part of the Paramount funding, Giortana has two billionaire investors participating in the deal. Joe Agresti has contributed the most equity, while local entrepreneur David Ingram has contributed the third most. Giarratana himself has contributed the second most equity. So Giarratana has got the second most equity in the deal and is personally guaranteeing the $340 million loan on behalf of his other equity investors. Collectively, 76 investor entities have contributed. Earlier this year, Giarratana terminated a loan deal. The cost to terminate was approximately $3 million. So he had what they call a capital stack, right? And the stack is like who gets paid first if things go wrong. So the debt, the farther down the stack you go, the debt gets more expensive. Well, he had two different lenders at different parts of the stack. He could not find the third remaining partner to take the rest of the stack. He did find somebody that would do the whole thing themselves, but to get out of those loans that he had already signed, and they celebrated. I mean, when these loans got signed, it was on the front page of the Business Journal. This was a big deal. Now, those loans that were celebrated a few months earlier cost him $3 million to get out of. Giarratana said that 38 future Paramount condominiums have been pre-sold. The average price of the pre-sold unit over $3 million, or equivalent of about $1,600 per square foot. Total, there will be 360 apartments, 140 condominiums, and a 505-space parking garage. When completed, the development will yield a 750-foot tall contemporary tower that will be Nashville's and the state of Tennessee's tallest. So you want to build the tallest tower in the state of Tennessee? It ain't going to be easy. If Giarratana has struggled to the extent that he struggled to get it done, there's very, very few people walking the earth that could have gotten it done. So you got to give these guys credit. I don't want to be hearing all the hate. Okay? You know, developers have a very difficult, risky job. If a project goes right, they can make a lot of money. If the project goes sideways, they can lose everything. So give these guys a little bit of grace. Let's keep moving. Lower Broadway area building sells for $10 million. The downtown Nashville commercial building last sold to since closed Losers Bar and Grill. Yo, that is a tough name. I'm not a bar guy. I've been alcohol free for 10 years, so I'm kind of out of the loop. But if I were going to go to a bar, I'm confident I would not go to a bar for losers. Okay? I don't know what the people in Losers Bar and Grill were looking like, but I can tell you that the women weren't the most attractive, because no attractive woman is signing up to go to Losers Bar and Grill. Okay? So I don't get it. I don't get it. If I owned a bar and grill, I'd have special incentives for beautiful women to come in and hang out. Okay? This is the opposite. This is like ugly women and poor men only. But I'm getting off track here. Located 1 block south of Lower Broadway, has sold for $10 million. Located next to the structure housing John Bon Jovi's Nashville bar, and with an address of 111 4th Avenue South, the building stands 3 floors. They received a $9 million loan from Nashville-based Fourth Capital, which is a great loan. That's only 10% down. The seller paid $1.5 million for the property in 2001. So, there you go. We don't know what's coming next. We do know it sold for $10 million. We do know the previous concept was not good. It's next to John Bon Jovi's Nashville bar. I also don't know, I've never understood the appeal of John Bon Jovi. You know, I like to see like the avatar of the average John Bon Jovi fan. Show me what they look like. I don't know if I've met any, but he seems to have some lasting power. And then a 10% down loan from Fourth Capital, which is a nice little deal. If I was looking for debt, I might call the Fourth Capital right now, knowing that. All right. Should we talk some trash about California? I think they deserve it. And Bed Bath & Beyond has come out and tells the truth about the state of businesses in California. Bed Bath & Beyond is planning a brick and mortar comeback after its bankruptcy filing 2 years ago. The company, now owned by Beyond, said Wednesday it would not open or operate any physical stores in the nation's most populous state. Executive Chairman Marcus Lemonis blamed the state's onerous financial and regulatory climate. This decision isn't about politics, it's about reality, he said. California has created one of the most overregulated, expensive, and risky environments for businesses in America. It's a system that makes it harder to employ people, harder to keep doors open, and harder to deliver value to customers. He pointed to what he called higher taxes, higher fees, higher wages that many businesses simply cannot sustain, and endless regulations that strangle growth. The first revamped Bed Bath & Beyond home store opened this month right here in Nashville, part of a partnership with home decor retailer Kirkland's to transform about 75 of his namesake locations into Bed Bath & Beyond sites by next year. The chain was known for its ubiquitous blue 20% off coupons. It also pioneered the so-called treasure hunt shopping experience, a strategy summed up as pile it high, let it fly, in which stores were so stocked floor to ceiling with goods that patrons didn't know what they would actually find. Lemonis, who is also the CEO of Camping World and Good Sam Enterprises, is also a familiar presence on reality TV. He starred in CNBC's The Prophet, appeared on ABC's Secret Millionaire, and guest hosted The Celebrity Apprentice alongside then future President Donald Trump. Lemonis said on social media that Bed Bath & Beyond would have stores in almost every other state, but not California. Man, it's too bad. You know, that California life is not for me. You couldn't pay me enough to live in California. But I happened to be out there this summer for the national soccer tournament. So my daughter, Bella, plays at the highest level of youth soccer in the country. And if you qualify for the national championship tournament, it was held in San Diego this summer. And I will tell you, the weather could not have been more beautiful. The San Diego area, at least the area that we were staying, which was San Diego and like the coast north of San Diego, I remember all the little names. Beautiful area, and actually people were pretty reasonable. There was the pricing wasn't crazy except for gasoline. The roads weren't congested. It was 70 degrees in full sun, which sounds cold, but it was lovely. You didn't have to wear a sweatshirt the whole time. They have all of these gifts that they've done nothing to earn, right? All of that. And they're just squeezing the life out of people with more and more government. And if you were ever to ask me my political viewpoints on these things, I'm a policy guy, so tell me about your policies. Well, listen, I would start with, I want a small and inexpensive federal government, right? I want government to play a very minor role in my life. I do not view government as someone that's somehow going to help my business grow. I don't view government as somebody that's going to save me if times get tough. I want government to stay out of my way, right? That's my view of government. It's pretty simple. Don't steal so much money from me and stay out of my way. That is the opposite of their approach to things in California, and it just keeps getting worse and worse, and they refuse to course correct. So unfortunately, the United States' biggest marketplace, I believe, is California, and it is nearly impossible for a business to survive there. Quite a situation. Let's keep moving. We'll move quickly through these last ones. Tennessee State lands approval for a $58 million engineering facility. A state-of-the-art engineering facility slated for Tennessee State University campus. Construction is expected to begin this winter and be completed summer of 2027. It is a 70,000 square foot engineering building. Several of the labs will focus on future energy, additive manufacturing, and drone flight and air traffic. So that's the part that got my attention. Tennessee State is kind of this forgotten old university that needs the government to keep it alive. You wouldn't think that type of environment would breed actual learning that's useful in the real world, but that's what we've done here. 58 million on a facility that's going to teach in-demand real-world skills. So, you got to give people credit when credit's due. I'm not a big advocate of college. I don't think it is a good investment for an 18-year-old kid to take on debt to go and supposedly learn something that's going to allow them to make money in the future. I think you save that money, you get out into the world, you work, you learn as you work. If you really think paying to be taught more things later would be worth it, you can always go back and get it when you're older and a little bit smarter. To let 18-year-old kids go into debt for more learning, I think for most people is a bad idea. But again, here we go. At least they're giving it their best shot here. Construction will require the demolition of Clay Hall, built in 1959. The future facility will replace TSU's current engineering building, Torrance Hall, built in 1982, which will also be demolished upon the building's completion. Quote, Tennessee State University is preparing the next generation of engineers who will shape our state and our nation. This investment ensures that our students have access to the tools, spaces, and experiences necessary to compete globally. Amen. So if you are going to go to college, leave college with some type of useful degree like engineering. Don't be sending your kids to college for a liberal arts degree. You are wasting money now. You are going to be making payments and paying interest for years to come for a potential degree. A lot of these kids don't even get degrees, so they just get some classes that absolutely will not help them make money as an adult later. So be very, very smart. Don't just follow the crowd. Don't just encourage your children to do what you did because you lived at a different time. I just don't think it makes any financial sense most of the time to be sending these kids off at 18 years old and start racking up debt to learn some things that may or may not ever actually benefit them financially in their life. Take a hard look at it. I understand the experience. You want them to have the experience, blah, blah, blah. Well, you can have the experience by moving to a college town. You don't have to be writing that check to the university every month, every year to have the college experience. Trust me, I went to college. Some of my buddies dropped out of school and just hung out for a couple of years. They got the whole college experience without leaving with a ton of debt. There is a way to get the experience without putting yourself in a horrible financial situation early in life. The Belmont University Mike Curb College of Entertainment and Music Business, that is a mouthful, has now opened on Music Row. The project will involve the renovation of existing buildings and the construction of a curb facility. The two-phase project is being made possible by a $58 million lead gift from philanthropist and music industry veteran Mike Curb and his Mike Curb Foundation. Phase 1 includes the renovation of the Buddy Lee Attraction / Capitol Records building at 38 Music Square East, with that structure including 17,000 square feet of songwriting rooms, listening spaces, live sound classrooms, and student lounges. So, Belmont University, its claim to fame is it's kind of the artsy college, right? You want to be in any type of arts or in the entertainment business, you want to be in music. That's the real pull of Belmont, and now they are extending themselves to Music Row, which I think is pretty smart as well. So got to give credit to Belmont. Give credit to the Mike Curb for donating the $58 million, who probably had the idea, but we should give Belmont some credit too. All right, 3 more stories here, and we'll finish this up. East Bank mixed-use development halted, and the site is instead listed for sale. Nashville-based development company CA South Development is seeking to sell East Bank property for which it paid almost $39 million for in 2023. So they've been carrying $39 million in debt. Maybe not all $39 million is debt financed, but a lot of that is debt financed. Been carrying it since 2023, only to turn around and flip the dirt. Overlooking the Cumberland River, the 15-acre property offers a main address of 1400 Davidson Street. Previously, the group was considering undertaking a mixed-use development on the site. In 2023, CA South desired a specific plan rezoning to allow the project with multiple buildings offering hotel, office, retail, restaurant, and/or residential spaces. The site is zoned to accommodate buildings up to 20 stories. The Scrapyard deal was equivalent to about $5.21 million per acre. If the for sale CA South property lands, for example, $5 million an acre, a future deal could be valued at $77 million. So you pay $39 million for the dirt. You pay the debt every month thereafter, and then you sell the same piece of dirt for potentially $77 million. So, I'm sure they were licking their lips when that Scrapyard deal closed, and they had that real easy comparable sale from which to draw their conclusion. Hey, maybe we can double our money on this thing without actually building anything. And that's what they're trying to sort out now. We'll see what happens. All right. I think we're going to save this one for next week, the discussion of Fannie and Freddie going private. This is a lot of detail that I don't really want to go into at the end of the show. I'm getting tired. Y'all are probably getting tired. So let's finish up with coming back to my home area, Franklin, which I would argue is the best city in the country. Don't get me started. I'll hype up some Franklin. I'll hype up some Williamson County. I'll definitely hype up Nashville for business reasons. But in terms of like where you want to live, where you want to raise a family, where you expect to live in your own kind of personal utopia, Franklin is number one, Brentwood's number two. So there's that. Plans for the 145-acre Ovation site are back in motion. After years of delays, Highwoods Properties has unveiled its long-awaited development plans for the massive Ovation site in Franklin, which includes thousands of residential units, millions of square feet of commercial space, and hundreds of hotel rooms. Highwoods is partnering with California-based CenterCal Properties. To be specific, 1,525 multifamily units. Keep in mind, not long ago, I had a deal together. It was an assemblage of, I can't remember all the details. It was probably 10 different parcels from seven different sellers. We had the whole deal together with a real reputable developer, right? This is in Nolensville. They wanted to do something like this Ovation project, not to the size, right? It was a smaller total project, but the thing we needed to get done for that deal to close was we needed approval to get apartments built there. In the city of Nolensville, they claimed to want to be the next Franklin, but they refused to approve any apartments on the site. That deal ultimately closed. That ground is still laying bare today. So, you've got Class A+ cities like Franklin that is approving luxury apartments. And then you've got these piddly little Nolensvilles next door. I like Nolensville. I do business there. I don't like what they're doing at the city level in Nolensville. Never have. It's actually the town of Nolensville, I believe. The town of Nolensville has kind of been a laughingstock for a long time. They wouldn't approve apartments. But you look over not far away, Franklin is approving 1,525 multifamily units, 69 townhomes, 350 hotel rooms, and 1.65 million square feet of commercial space. I don't know how Nolensville expects to be more like Franklin if they don't start acting like Franklin. Very, very frustrating dealing with Nolensville. I think twice about getting involved with any type of new development type projects in Nolensville for that very reason. I have no faith at the town level. Total of 15 buildings ranging from 1 story to 12 stories. Ovation has been in flux for more than a decade. Highwoods paid $57.8 million for the rest of the project site in 2021. So in 2021, they put down $57.8 million, and it's just been sitting in dirt for 5 years. The dirt's been sitting there, nothing happening for 5 years after paying $57.8 million. So again, you got to have some respect from these developers. You know, the way that they manage their cash flows is extraordinary, because you have an obscene amount of money going out for years before you have that first dollar come back in. So, I mean, that's really why a lot of these developers aren't long-term hold guys. They usually get that project done and they turn and flip it to a long-term investor so they can satisfy all of that debt and get a little bit of money back in their pocket, because it is just extremely difficult to do. So that's what I've got for you today, guys. I appreciate you tuning in. As always, the show is brought to you by Beechwood Commercial Real Estate Brokerage, your AI-enhanced broker for sellers in Nashville and the Southeast. If you are a commercial property owner who's been considering selling, we will obviously provide you with everything you need to make an educated decision, and then we will bring your property into the marketplace and get you the absolute highest price the market will pay. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you again in a few weeks.